some Republican lawmakers are weighing a different approach to how the state spends taxpayer dollars. The proposal would require state agencies to justify every dollar they spend in every budget cycle. We're going to discuss the pros and cons with our guests. Republican Senator John Albers of Roswell. He is chairman of the Senate Public Safety Committee and vice chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. Also here is Democratic Representative Mary Margaret Oliver of Decatur. Her House committees include Appropriations, Governmental Affairs, Judiciary, and Judiciary Juvenile. Welcome to Lawmakers this session.
Thank you,
We love having you on all the time.
Thank you.
So we're going to start with this zero-based budgeting. For viewers who are hearing this for the first time, what does zero-based budgeting mean, and what does it mean just in practice too?
Certainly. Well, zero-based budgeting is what we all do at home. Each year, we sit around that kitchen table typically as a family and you budget. You don't just take what I had last year and add a little bit or subtract a little, depending on what's happening in the world. You look at what your priorities are and you make sure you're building them accordingly. And things change in our lives, just like they do in our businesses. Businesses have been doing this for a very long time, and it makes sure that we're doing a very proactive approach of doing the right thing with taxpayer dollars. Because here in Georgia, we don't have any money. We have the money from our taxpayers. We want to be really good financial stewards of those dollars.
And you said Georgia used to do this.
We did. We had a bill that expired. It was a run for 10 years, and it ended just a few years ago. It worked well, and we want to make sure we put that same examination back on those dollars. And working as one of the most fiscally responsible states, we want to make sure we stay there.
Okay, Representative Mary Margaret Oliver, you were here through that before and after. Okay, do we need zero-based budgeting?
We did have it. Most states do have it in one form or another. As a pragmatic matter, I think we do look at the budget from the get-go every year. I've been on the Appropriations Committee for a long time. I went and looked at OPB's website as to how they were reporting on their zero-based budgeting when the bill was in effect for its 10 years. There were 100-page reports after 100-page reports. Did anybody ever read those reports? And can you prove to me that that mechanism was effective? Has it really changed much in other states? Would it change much here? I'm pretty sure I would have voted for it at the time, but let's look at this bill that has a good label to it, but I just don't know if it's changed that much. If I were in charge of changing the budget process, I would approach things differently.
Okay, Chairman Albers, you say this approach cuts waste. Can you give us a concrete example of how that happens?
Absolutely. It's not really just about a report. It's about as we build the budgets every year, as we work together, you don't want to just take what we did last year and say, hey, the budget's up a few percent or down a few percent, because things are changing. So we want to look at that as a staffing ratio, right, as an example for an area where we're serving constituents. Are we implementing tools like artificial intelligence or other technology? Are we doing things smarter and better to make sure we're utilizing those dollars right? And contracts change and times change, and we always want to make sure we're laser focused on that. We have a great state. In fact, fiscal responsibility has always been our mantra, and that's why we have a balanced budget every year and we do so well. But we need to continue to focus on it, and that's our job as legislators.
Okay. Representative Oliver, I know you want to talk about some other things, so I want to get those in. You want to talk about the crisis with DFACS foster care contracts. There's a shortfall there, too.
There's an $86 million deficit in DFACS spending for abused and traumatized children who've been taken away from their families, which is a big deal. When the state of Georgia takes a child away from a family, the law, it's a constitutional right they're accepting from the family, and the law says you have to provide services to that family to reunite the family, treat the family, or find a permanent placement. Canceling contracts that provide over 28,000 services for these 10,000 children, most of which are court-ordered, is a real problem. I think it's a crisis. And the nonprofit community that has provided most of these placements and services can't afford to have their budgets slashed without or with 10 days notice and stay in business. I think it's an emergency that I've asked the governor to use emergency funds to restore the contracts.
And what are you hearing?
Not hearing much. I know the state's going to do something. I know we're going to do something. But these contracts are my top priority. We also need an audit. We've been through, this will be the fourth, our supplemental budget and our fiscal year 27 budget. This will be the 4 budget cycles where we've run multi-million-dollar, now $86 million deficits in defect spending. That's not right. We've got to fix this problem and serve these children as the law requires us to.
Okay, we're going to keep up with that. I want to get back to your zero-based budgeting. You say that it will lead to smarter government, not just smarter, smaller government. Explain that a little bit.
Absolutely. We've got a growing population in Georgia, which is wonderful. People have moved here from all over the country. Although I always remind them, don't vote in the problems you just escaped from. But while they're here, what we want to do is make sure that as we need more services, we need roads, we need bridges. Unfortunately, we need things like prisons, and we need public safety, and we need all these other things, that we're doing it right. Because it's not just throwing a body or a dollar at it, it's doing things smart and better than we did in the past. Think about 20, 30 years ago, how we used to work versus the way we do work now. And technology is evolving so fast that we want to harness all those things and make sure we're building our budgets, just like Representative Albers just said. That's a great place to start with zero-based budgeting if something continually is having a budget deficit. That means we're not doing a really good job to planning to begin with.
So you can see it from that point of view, definitely.
I can see it from that point of view. I would approach the deficit and defects differently than zero-based budgeting. But I do think we have cut the numbers of state employees, for instance, in DOT, by 100%. Used to be 8,000 employees, now they're 4,000. Those are rough numbers. We have cut employees. We've eliminated our private telephone system in the state. That saved 1,100 employees. The point I'm making is that we have been trying, as a fiscally conservative state, we have been trying to update our technologies. We're struggling in the way that every business does. I certainly struggle with technology in my small business, and every state does. It's not a panacea, zero-based budget. There are other things I'd do first. For instance, we're a fiscally conservative state, but does that mean we should be 50th in arts funding? The arts are a bigger industry in Georgia than peanuts. It's a bigger industry than many, many other things that we fund elaborately. Why is Georgia 50th? That's not being fiscally conservative. That's 50th in arts funding. That's not fiscally conservative, and that's the kind of issue I want to talk about.
Okay, I want to get to something else you want to discuss before we run out of time. Crisis beds. We don't have enough of them in this state.
We don't. Georgia has been part of a mental health reform that is recognized in the nation as something a very positive step forward. We struggle with how we deal with people in psychiatric crisis modes. That's when they can be violent, when they can be violent to themselves. And enough crisis beds we project are a great number more than what we have now. We don't have permanent placements in psychiatric hospitals. We have crisis beds that will serve people for 3 to 10 days perhaps to become stabilized. And we are funding those more, but we have come out from under a federal Justice Department civil rights settlement, which is a huge accomplishment. But many of our communities, Cairo, Georgia, or Decatur, Georgia, or Atlanta, are dealing with a homeless mentally ill population. It's visible, it is concerning to all our cities and counties, and many of those individuals come in and out of crisis, mental issues. They come in and out of jails, and we are not managing that issue of crisis psychiatric care in an efficient way, in a fiscally conservative way. We need to serve those people in a way that we prevent crisis when we can and prevent the kind of treatment that they deserve.
And that is something on appropriations you will be discussing, I would imagine.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Before we let you go on this, is there a risk that essential programs, especially in areas like education, public safety, could be affected by on the chopping block if we go to this zero-based budgeting?
Not at all. In fact, we did it for 10 years
Okay.
very successfully. And if you look at where we are in Georgia right now, of having record surpluses, great fiscal conservative, and got us to where we are, we want to continue down that path, because if it ain't broke, we shouldn't fix it. In this case, we're going to do it right.
Yeah. So you're talking about that in appropriations on your end, and you're talking about your DBHDD issues on your end. So we thank you so much for what you both do. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming on
Thank
the
you,
show
Donna.
to talk
Appreciate it.
about
Thank you.